Welcome to the Dr. DC podcast. My name is producer Richard, and across the internet waves is the Doctor himself.
Hello.
Each week we talk about the weird and wonderful world of DC while fielding questions from listeners like you. Oh, it feels so good to say it again. Oh, I don't even have notes, baby.
Back in the rhythm, baby.
Oh, yeah. We're probably like a second delay, so everything will be awkward.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know which of us is editing this one, but if it's like the Patreon episode I edited yesterday, it's just a lot of me going through and removing silences while we're waiting for the other person to talk.
Yeah, I mean, I do that for the regular episodes too, but I think it's just we have a reason now. So.
Well, yeah. Normally when we regular record, I just stare at you. I always have a 3-second delay just because I'm not sure what I'm going to say. It's like a self-censorship thing.
Self-censorship? That's a thing that we're allowed to do?
Yeah, what a revelation.
Wow, I'm going to need to go back and change some things.
We got to get rid of like 80 episodes.
3 years of content just cut down to about an hour and a half.
Oh my god. Well, yeah, this is the traditional final episode of Doctober.
I thought you were going to say of Dr. DC. How much spookier could get it? That's right, it's Doctober! Ho, ho, ho! Happy Halloween! Goodness gracious. That's right, we are doing a special episode today. We're talking about I know it's crazy to think about, but we're talking about a book.
Yeah. A book that you have read, I'm assuming.
Yes, this is a book that I have read.
Good. Now that everyone believes us.
Good. That's my convincing tone of voice, is that I like to read books.
We're talking about the first volume of Gotham by Midnight, which was a series from the sort of New 52 era about Jim Corrigan and the Spectre, and it's obviously set in Gotham. But we're talking about this first 6 issues. So, like written by Ray Fawkes, art by Ben Templesmith. I think this is a series that has come up in conversation before when we've talked about the Spectre and stuff like that, but I'm assuming you hadn't read it before this.
Oh, I didn't.
I like that you didn't even give the deception any time to take hold at all. You just gave up.
Oh, I read the books. Yeah, that's.
Let's just start very, very broadly.
Let's start this broadly. Listen here, toots.
Christ almighty. We're back, baby.
Oh, yeah. Let's talk about comic books, you nincompoops.
Nincompoop is such like a nothing insult. It's
you're good for nothing, do nothing dandies.
Wow. I mean, getting more offensive. We're getting
I'm gonna punch you right in the kisser. Oh.
Yeah, do you remember
special abuse? Oh.
Do you remember when sitcoms ended every episode with just like a casual spousal abuse joke?
God, it sounds like every day of my life. Oh.
Good Lord.
I need help. Please, someone come and help.
What a twist.
I know. Is it
so? Very, very broadly, what did you enjoy this? Before we kind of get into talking about the story, did you enjoy this book, or did I fuck up again?
This book that I read, yes, I enjoyed reading the book. No, I did. I actually really, really liked the book. I want to see how long I can really make you question it, but
you made that sound like we were making a hostage video.
Yes. Please send help. I've read the book. Oh, did someone say something about a hostage situation?
No,
is that the didn't. Is that might be a need for Count terrorism.
Oh God, no. This character dies when Doctober ends. No more character. No.
1 hour on the bum.
Good lord. Okay, so
300 degrees.
Jesus Christ. So you did enjoy this book.
Yeah, I didn't really know what to expect, especially because I didn't know what to expect with this book.
Nice.
Oh yeah, comedy.
I feel like we're still getting our groove back.
Yeah, 3 years later. One of these days, we're gonna figure this whole comedy podcast thing out.
3 years of momentum ground to a screeching halt.
Oh yeah, does that count as momentum if you only move a turn every hour?
I mean, we were technically improving.
Wow. I mean, yeah, but Jesus. I liked this book a lot. I think just like broad strokes, I think that the story was really great. The concept was probably even better. And this is really more about a setting up of a concept than it was that much of a story to me. I mean, it didn't have, I mean, I guess it's volume 1, but it felt very much like laying the groundwork of something that was much larger than it. And so like long term, I think that it will be a really good potential story, but I think the piece that I got was very much just sort of putting you in a position where you could sort of understand all the things that they were talking about and sort of set this landscape of why, like, what's the backstory for this character? Why are they in this situation? Like, what's the big threat? Because, I mean, even the big threat in this book felt like it was sort of like limply walked away at the end, and you were like, clearly, like, that's not really the end of it. So,
yeah. I mean, there is only one additional volume to this book. Total, it was only 12 issues and 1 annual for the series.
Does the second volume like seal it up though?
Kind of, yeah. And the second volume includes the big twist that I think I've talked about on the show before, which is you learn that Corrigan actually controls the Spectre. Up until this point, you think he's just containing the Spectre, and the Spectre tells him who to judge. The big twist in Volume 2 is that Corrigan is actually the one directing, like, God's vengeance.
Oh,
which is, like, this big sort of revelation. But this first volume is the first 6 issues. Why don't we just jump in? Why don't we talk about the story of this book, such as it is?
Yeah, absolutely. So the basic like concept of this is that you're taking sort of a group of misfits and tossing them together on like a team to design, like the team is designed to take on like supernatural elements of Gotham City's nightlife.
They work for the police department, but they're the police department that like section that deals with the weird ghost crap.
Yeah, it's Gordon specifically Commissioner Gordon specifically put this team together. I think it's a cool ass concept. I love the idea that Gotham City has this like supernatural. I mean, why wouldn't you, right? Considering like all of the crazy shit that happens in Gotham City, I would assume that they would have like much like they did in Central City with like the Flash, having like the police have to create groups to deal with superheroes because you can't just like let them run amok. I mean, they're still like vigilantes.
Yeah. Well, and it's not only like does Gordon create this group, they're called the Midnight Shift.
Yeah.
But it's also when Batman is like, I don't know what this is. Like even Batman has like the blind spot for him is this sort of spiritual kind of celestial realm of threat. So between Gordon and Batman, they're both like, can you guys figure this out?
Yeah.
It's sort of like the team that they dump ghost stuff on, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. So the volume starts by introducing the employee of Precinct 13 through the eyes of an internal affairs agent. So they have this internal affairs guy that's coming to do a report on their department because they're just like, what the fuck do you guys even do?
Yeah,
like I see these reports and they're ridiculous.
Like, he says something like, your case files don't make any sense. You've literally never logged an arrest.
Yes.
And you are burning through money. Like, this is clearly fraud.
So the skeptic, I think, acts as like the way for it's the reader's point of view through this, I guess. Is you have somebody to relate to, somebody that you can be naive through that, so that there's a reason to tell the story. Because you don't want to just the main characters be giving expositional dialogue the whole time. So this internal affairs person gets to ask all the questions that the audience would want to ask, basically, which I think is great. I like that framing of it, because a lot of the times with these sort of big eye concepts, you're just filling it full of exposition and these like long dialogue trees, trying to just like vaguely understand it, or you're put in a position where they're just saying stuff and assuming that you've read a gigantic backlog. So
Sure.
I mean, top-notch writing just from that standpoint. Like, just to even frame it that way, I think makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So we're meeting the midnight shift for the first time. And sort of this is the story arc is between sort of this internal affairs agent and sort of our lead character, Corrigan.
Yeah.
So it's introducing everything, I think, is this way allows Fawkes to sort of sell the unbelievable nature of the series right from the very, very start, which is awesome. Yeah. From here, the Midnight Shift goes on to deal with a very strange several events sort of throughout this entire night. Or is it a one night, or is it a series of each book?
They are. It's taking place over a series of evenings, but basically there are some spiritual happenings. So there are some ghost sightings. There are some instances of like pestilence.
Yes.
There's instances of people,
demonic nun.
There's a demonic nun ghost. There's instances of people literally drinking themselves to death.
Yeah.
There's a few sort of things that are supernaturally involved, and they're all tied together to the history of Gotham and the history of Slaughter Swamp. Slaughter Swamp,
this sort of,
for those who read the comics, that's where Grundy comes from, is this sort of haunted swamp on the outskirts of Gotham.
That's awesome. There's also this sort of language that's connecting them all too. They're all speaking this sort of weird foreign language that no one's ever heard of or ever heard anything similar to. So that's what's immediately sort of connecting you to all of them. The demonic nun was, I think that whole thing looked so cool and like came off so spooky. And
yeah. There's these two kids that I think see the demon. Or no, sorry, there's a demonic nun somewhere, but then there's these two kids who encounter the real life nun that's part of the Midnight Shift, Sister Justine, and they freak out because they think it's like, the same person. Demon nun. Yeah. And these kids are speaking this weird language to each other, like this weird kind of primordial occult kind of language.
Yes. And the demonic nun is basically like brainwashing all of these kids and bringing them into this like, I think it's a schoolhouse. I'm not really sure.
I think it's like an old schoolhouse. Yeah, like a sort of colonial era kind of thing.
I think that this demonic nun thing is probably the creepiest thing in the entire series, I think.
Yeah.
I thought that it was so, I mean, we'll talk about the art after, but I just think the art styling it works so well with what they're doing there. But then it is also interesting that they have another nun also as part of their group, which is, I think, is a really cool concept. Like, I just want this to be a show. Like,
yeah, I mean, as far as like just a conceit for a book, it's relatively tight. Like, it does kind of feel like something you would set up for a pilot or whatever, right? Like, if Corrigan is the detective that has the spirit of God's vengeance, then it kind of makes sense that you have like a nun, right? Someone to sort of also represent that religion, but from the human side, and that you have like, then you have someone more sciencey, like I think it's Dr. Tar is the one on the team that's like their tech person, like their Cisco. But then you also have this skeptic come in. Like, it feels like a very sort of tight, like procedural setup like you would do for TV.
Like, I feel like the skeptic is supposed to join the team at the end. Like, that's the beginning. That's the pilot episode where the skeptic
that's like,
is brought in.
It's like the Mulder Scully kind of thing, right? Where even after encountering these things, it's like, but I don't know if I like how this department does things, or like you need that person.
And there's
there.
like the like trigger happy guy with the like goatee, and like they just like they have such a great team setup that I'm just like, oh, I just want to like hang out with. And then you even get like a flashback to one of the like team members, like their past, and like it's so cinematic.
Yeah, I think you get a flashback to Sister Justine meeting Corrigan and encountering the Spectre. Because the thing for a bunch of this book is Corrigan is like, we need to get a handle on this so that I can keep the Spectre in. Like, the less they have a handle on the ghost things happening, the more he has to fight to rein in the Spectre. And he's like, please, like, we got to solve this before the Spectre gets out.
Exactly.
Like, who knows who the Spectre is going to judge, right? It's sort of like, because at this point, he believes that it's not in his control.
Yes. Another incident that happens is there's like this strange shadow creature that's coming out of this like woman, which is sort of like part of the sort of big monster reveal towards the end, where it's this monster that's like has like a heart, but it's like it was like a fungusy heart or something. It was weird.
Yeah, it's I think it's meant to be like the flowers that grow in Slaughter Swamp. These sort of black petals or whatever. There's a couple of monsters in this. They all have kind of odd names. There's Ovovo is one. There's Act is one. And then the big one that we get to is called Ichondrid.
Yes. Cool names. I mean, really cool, like ancient kind of names. I like that.
Yeah, they sort of feel, they feel kind of like Lovecrafty.
Like old world sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So there's that creepy nun, and anytime, like nun, old schoolhouse, you're like, I think I can understand why there's a ghost here. It's like, there's probably something horrible happened here.
Yeah, but I mean, and honestly, like each character and monster, like they have like these really flushed out personalities. Like nobody in the entire story feels like a throwaway character. Everyone has like, even if they're in there for a second, like even the girl who's like carrying the monster, like it just feels like everybody has agency and you really understand everybody's backstory and reasons for doing things. And
yeah, totally. Right. So they've encountered that. As they start going, these other things that we talked about, where there's like pestilence outbreaks or there's people drinking themselves to death. They keep encountering that alien language. They keep encountering, basically they realize all of these things are connected to each other.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We're just getting all the distractions today. My wife's now come in.
Did she also
wow. She also pooped her pants, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, did she shit herself like my daughter did? Yeah.
You know what? It's the 5th time today. Leave me
I'm
alone.
impressed that you can still have poop in you.
You guys are
anyways. So, yes, I think that like all of the horror is handled really well too. Like it actually feels like scary and like supernatural in a way that's not usually done.
Well, because this comes back to the discussion about the art. Ben Templesmith's art is very scratchy, gothic horror, kind of watercolors. It's got a real, it almost feels like it's running a little bit.
Well, I think the thing with this is the combination of different mediums that he's using. Because I think that it's deceptively messy and sort of like unprofessional almost, while actually being like a really, really like challenging piece of work. Because basically it's a combination of like watercolor, pen work, and then like digital. So you're actually seeing clearly that this work was done digitally, because there's moments where you're actually getting like depth of field and blurriness to backgrounds and things like that, which you just can't do in traditional media form. So you literally had to do this like with a bunch of different formats all together. So it seems like rough and gritty, but then when you actually take time to see things, like if you look like this, when you see like stained glass windows and things like that, it's actually super, super detailed. So it's both not like the best looking comic book, but also is like a perfect fit for this, and actually is really beautiful. And each frame I want to like look at.
I think it works too, because there are some artists that do a great job of drawing like a like facial structure exactly the same in every panel. You're like, I know that jawline, that is this character. This one, it's like, it's different every time, but it kind of works with that horror thing. Like, you get like these sort of twisted faces. Like the nun ghost is terrifying because it's got that sort of like, almost makes me think of, in It, like the creepy painting that scares the kid. It makes me think of like that sort of thing. And the monster designs for things like Echondrid in this book, it's not like a very defined.
I think Echondrid's probably the failing of this book, in my opinion. Art-wise, I think that's the only one that I'm sort of like, it feels like generic and sort of not echondrid going on. But
see, I kind of liked that it wasn't like, and we need to like see like all the bones here, and we need to see like Echondrid is mostly shadowy, mostly kind of formless, just sort of like a big kind of egg shape with arms and legs. Yeah.
But I think it works as like a great contrast to the Spectre.
Yes. Should we talk a little bit about why these demons are coming out and messing with Gotham and fucking
super
around?
Progressive sort of thing to be tackling in this book, which is it's literally like I mean, they're basically talking about, I'm assuming, First Nations. Like
they're talking about again, this goes back to the founding of Gotham. Essentially, they're talking about the Miagani tribe, which is the tribe meant to have been there first, and that in order to settle and build Gotham, it's basically built on the backs of this like horrible genocide, this terrible massacre of the Miagani people. That's why Slaughter Swamp is called Slaughter Swamp. Gotham is literally built on top of the bones of genocide. And so all of these spirits are kind of like, they're not the spirits of the people killed.
No.
But they're sort of like incarnations of like the malevolence or the need for revenge or the dark past of Gotham. Like they kind of, they're basically, their whole thing is they are manifesting and affecting the people of Gotham and trying to make things so bad because they want
the Spectre.
They're trying to basically make things so bad that Corrigan can't contain the Spectre. So the Spectre will come out, see what has happened, see the history of Gotham, and pass judgment on Gotham City. It's sort of like this. It's like this reversal kind of thing. You think like, well, don't do that. The Spectre will get you. But they want the Spectre because they want the Spectre to turn on basically the people that colonized Gotham and say like, this is your comeuppance.
Well, exactly, right? And I think that's why they're doing things like killing people with alcohol and things like that. They're trying to like amp up the bad stuff that already is Gotham, and they even say that like the soil of Gotham is tainted.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, we already know Slaughter Swamp itself is haunted. Like I said, it's connected to Grundy. We already know stuff is going bad there. But, Gotham is full of, like, chemical plants and shit like that. Like, there's a long history of Gotham being this sort of poisoned, kind of horrible place.
Yeah.
Economically, there's a lot of, like, people drinking themselves to death in the regular fashion, right? Like, really, all these spirits are doing is just, like, elevating what Gotham already is.
100%.
Which is this sort of, like, festering wound.
Like, even towards the end where they're saying, like, nothing good happens at night in Gotham. Like, you have to be careful.
Yeah.
And that's prior to any of this happening, so...
Yeah, so we do get to a certain point where these spirits essentially get what they want. Corrigan can't keep the Spectre in anymore. The only time we've seen the Spectre before that point was, I think, the flashback where he meets Sister Justine.
Yeah.
And that flashback, the Spectre, like, ruins some people. Like, the Spectre is not subtle. The Spectre doesn't just, like, yoink, there's your soul, go to hell. The Spectre, like... Oh, did you like commit mail fraud? Well, now here's like a giant envelope to paper cut you to death 1,000,000 times. Like the Spectre is so insanely like loves that poetic justice thing. Very graphic, very violent. Kind of has like a Jigsaw sort of streak to him.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's and they even say when the Spectre's like human sized, his responses are really bad. And then suddenly he grows 100 feet in the air And they're like,
Yeah.
we don't even know what he'll do at that size.
Well, yeah, exactly. Like, what sort of horrible thing is he going to visit on Gotham? And he grows to that size to match Echondrid. Echondrid is this sort of like Leviathan kind of size, too.
Who grows that size so that the Spectre has no choice but to look around at the entirety of Gotham.
Yes.
Which is why sort of when he gets to that size, suddenly Echondrid's just like, all right, peace.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. It's maybe surprisingly kind of progressive politics in this book.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, Ray Fawkes is Canadian, which
that explains.
These are things that we have to reckon with in both Canada and the US and in other places in the world, Australia, stuff like that. I think in Canada, we're at a further point in that conversation, but still a long way to go, obviously. But it wouldn't surprise me if, because Ray Fawkes is Canadian, this is a story maybe a little bit more top of mind than it would be for American counterparts.
Well, I think that I mean, coming from a perspective of not fully understanding, but like what going on with American politics in regards to First Nations and things like that, I think that because we're sort of pushing a little bit further than the States is, that the conversation is happening, and so seemingly it seems a lot worse what's going on here, and that is possibly true. But I think that because the conversation's happening here, people are way more aware of the injustices to First Nations here, and so I think it's just part of sort of the general culture of like understanding what's happening, the education. There's such a huge component of sort of our education system that's about sort of these injustices and the residential school systems and things like that. So I would not be surprised to find out that a Canadian was behind that, because I think it's so much part of like the zeitgeist in Canada right now in general, but also it's just a thing that we were taught since school.
Yeah, totally. There's a character that I want to mention here because they become important sort of around this point in the story. So the Spectre has been unleashed. Echondrid is like, peace, have a look around. You'll see that we're in the right. And we've already met Sister Justine, but there's this other character, I think her name's Lisa. And Lisa is part of this team. She has this sort of sonic ability, but it kind of has this like monkey's paw twist to it, where anytime she uses this sort of banshee kind of ability, someone has to die. It's just like, it's connected that way. So the Spectre has grown. The Spectre is looking around and being like, Gotham, your time of judgment is here. Like this,
you failed this city.
Yeah. I was. Oh, he did become the Spectre.
Mm-hmm.
And Sister Justine, basically, in sort of a funny way, if you think about it, because the Spectre is like God's vengeance. Sister Justine kind of goes like over his head to his boss. She prays to God. She's like, she wants to save the city.
Yeah.
I mean, she, I think, understands the legacy of it. She had to encounter those kids being scared of her, and that's tied to that nun. It's you sort of get that hint of like the residential school kind of aspect in that schoolhouse thing. All of these things are tied together. So she prays to God for a way basically out of this. As these demons and stuff are happening, Lisa uses her wail, her scream. But then she's really freaked out because she's like, someone's going to have to die. Like, that's how this power works. Essentially, okay, this is where it gets a little foggy for me, even after having read it. Sister Justine, I think, sacrifices her soul on behalf of Gotham, a sort of like Christy kind of thing. Like, I will take the hit. And if you let Gotham go. So she becomes both the person that has to die because of the scream and also satisfies the cause of judgment for the Spectre. So Gotham kind of gets off scot-free because of this very sort of Christian mythological sacrifice of Sister Justine.
100%. Yeah.
Basically, what we haven't talked about, you mentioned him at the beginning, but this guy from Internal Affairs, back in like the first issue, the first part of this book, Corrigan says something like, you don't believe in this crap? And he goes, no, I don't believe in this crap. And he's like, hang out with us for like 5 hours, you'll believe. Like, and that's when they encounter that, like, the creepy nun, all of this kind of ghosty stuff.
I mean, what a day to do
this
that.
IA guy is with them through all of this. He sees the spirit of God's vengeance 100 feet tall, looming over, or like hundreds of stories tall, looming over Gotham. He's seen like a spirit come out of the swamp. He's like encountering
seemingly
the manifestations of horrible events. Like, seemingly
he would have seen that even if he wasn't doing this, because I think everybody in Gotham saw the 100-foot tall.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that is true too, but he's having, I mean, even if you say this takes place over a week, which it might not, he's having an insane week at work. But basically, he gets to the end of this and he sort of has to say, like, I understand what you guys do in the midnight shift.
Yeah.
I get it. I have to figure out a way to write my report.
I guess I'm going to take a week to write this report in some way.
Which is sort of insane for him. It's kind of funny to think about, like, what he has to do after all of this stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's the thing, too, because the police, like, it's internal affairs is usually like, isn't it that like a federal run program? Like, it's not run by the precinct, right?
No. So it's not part of the command structure of the police, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
IA, I mean, at least the equivalent in Canada, they always talk about it being like, it's like a civilian kind of thing. It's like a slightly different department of the city, but it's like, because the whole point is, if you're investigating cops, you shouldn't also be a cop.
Be a cop, yeah, exactly.
Theoretically,
that was my thought.
I mean, that's maybe not 100% how it works, but technically speaking, that's kind of the idea, right? But yeah, I mean, like, the idea of like having to, because just because he's encountered this doesn't mean that like he gets to go to the office and be like, yeah, they definitely deal with ghosts. They'll be like, we sent you.
Okay, we're sending another person. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what is he supposed to do?
Yeah, there's no way that you can pretend. They're just gonna keep being like, well, I guess they're just paying people off to believe their nonsense. Like, I still wouldn't believe it. Yeah,
I like the idea too. We haven't talked about him very much, but Dr. Tar. Pretty sure that's who it is. The sort of tech, the kind of sciencey person is sort of like applying scientific and like social science practices to these occult things. He's the one that kind of tries to crack the language that they encounter. I think there's an encounter with either Act or Avovo where he actually like speaks a bit.
Yeah, because he figures it out
the spirit.
A little bit especially by the end, he's actually being able to translate it all.
Yeah, which is kind of neat, right? Like the idea of like a language is a language. It doesn't matter if it's a demon speaking it or a spirit or whatever. So he's taking these like real linguistic practices and he's using that to help the team. Like everyone has something they're kind of bringing to the midnight shift.
It would have been such a good show. It makes so much sense.
I mean, I think it would be a really good show. Hey, CW execs. Or no, sorry. No offense to CW, but HBO execs.
Oh yeah,
HBO
baby.
Max.
Yeah.
Let's get the midnight shift. Spin them off of Doom Patrol. Have the Doom Patrol encounter the midnight shift.
Yeah.
Spin them off. Shoshana, are you listening?
Yeah. Hell yeah. I think that makes so much. It's like a good version of R.I.P.D.
I mean, kind of. Yeah. Yeah, weirdly, actually. Okay. We talked a bit about the art. For me, the art is the thing that, like, that was more than story, more than anything else. I was like, I will get every issue of this just to look at it. I think that art is like, it's like haunting. It looks like a creepy Gothic painting in like an abandoned house. Like it all feels like the feeling it's trying to convey, like probably better than most comics ever do.
Yeah, I mean, you're getting this sort of, I think part of it is just based on the story you're trying to tell, but you're getting this sort of like film noir meets horror thing, which is an actual combo that you don't get that often.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing that keeps getting me is it's you're getting that sort of what you want from like a Gotham police story, because I think that's an important piece of this, is that at the end of the day, it is also a Gotham police story, sort of masked in this horror thing and then masked again in an actual Spectre story. But
Yeah.
you're getting this you're getting this whole component of it that's like this just film noir thing that you actually like. The artwork somehow portrays both that and the horror, which it just, it rules. I was so impressed by it, and I felt like the actual scariness worked. The way that they did going into the past, like the color sort of switches, that you actually like felt like you were in it. Like it felt cinematic. Like that's the only way that I can I keep going back to.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it also works well because, like, the whole thing is built on secrets. So it's either the secret of the history of Gotham, or it's the secret that Corrigan is the host for the Spectre. Because he hides that from the Midnight Shift. I mean, Sister Justine knows, but the other ones don't. Like, he's been trying to hide that shit. There's that secret. There's the secret that like Batman 100% doesn't know how to handle these things. Dumps it. Well,
that's the thing that we didn't even talk about that yet. But Batman shows up.
Yeah, I think he maybe shows up and like fires rockets at a content and it just doesn't do anything.
He's just like, well, all right.
Yeah, because I mean, I think that's a thing that happens in books too sometimes, where it's like, oh, it's set over here in Gotham, and it's like, but wouldn't Batman show up at some point? And this book does that pretty well.
That's a thing that happens so often in comic books, I think, where it's like, we're gonna do this in. I mean, you'll see it in like the movies, even when like you have like the Daredevil TV show. You're like, well, this is happening in New York City, where like Spider-Man's there, the Iron Man's in New York. Like, if this is enough that it's causing issue for all of New York, you would think everybody would at least just show up to be like, oh, fucking all right, I'll just deal with this. Like,
yeah.
Like they always, that's the thing Marvel does all the time, where they like sequester different parts of New York. New York's not that big. Like,
well, yeah, especially when you're talking about like the Defender stuff and like the Hand are like causing earthquakes and shit like that. It's like, where the fuck are the Avengers?
They would show up for that. Like, that's
their headquarters is right there.
Like, Brooklyn's not that big. Like, Spider-Man just could accidentally go into the other boroughs. Like, and they always show him in Manhattan. Like,
no, he stops at the edge of Hell's Kitchen. He's like, not my turf. Nope.
Yeah.
Sorry. I'm this friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
They actually should call me the Brooklyn neighborhood Spider-Man. That's the thing. And so it's a thing that this book, I was just reading through this, and the whole time I was like, okay, but like Batman's got one turf. Like, he's not going to not show up when there's, oh, yeah, there he is. Okay. Wow, they did it. All right.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they find the right balance between, like, he would definitely show up if there was, like, 100-story monster looming over Gotham. But he also, like,
doesn't deal with, like, supernatural shit. So, like,
he kind of does his bit, and then he goes like, oh, the Spectre's here? This is above my pay grade. Like, I think there's a lot.
He's not like a ghosts and goblins guy,
right.
You know?
No, he's not. He's not at all. I mean, every once in a while he encounters something supernatural. I mean, he's got characters with powers. That's more sci-fi. But Ra's al Ghul, Lazarus Pits, Deacon Blackfire is sort of like ghosty. You know, like he doesn't not encounter it. But that is not his wheelhouse, right? Like, he doesn't have like a little thing in his belt that he could like throw at a ghost.
He just he doesn't have he's not a Ghostbuster,
yeah. So I think this book does a good job of like both acknowledging that like he's aware and he's kind of helping, but like this is not his thing. And then the book also does a good job of taking a character like the Spectre, who we know can be untethered and not necessarily just good, but is essentially still supposed to be generally good, goodish. And they make the Spectre, I think, in this book scarier than any other book, even other than like Day of Vengeance and stuff like that. I think like there's a real fear of the Spectre in this book, and it both comes from Corrigan and Sister Justine.
You know what it reminds me of is, do you remember that movie Legion, where it's like all of like God's soldiers like come down, and like that's kind of what it reminded me of. It's like where they make like God Vengeance actually terrifying the way it should be, I would think. Like,
yeah, I mean, I think you could think of the Spectre a little bit as like God is vengeful in those early,
years.
books, the early, like the Old Testament and stuff like that. You can almost picture the Spectre as God being like, going to cut that bit out of me. That goes over here. I'm the nicer rebranded God, but over there is still the shit from the first book. Like,
I mean, we're treading on supernatural territory here.
well, I thought that was maybe why you would like this book. It's kind of why I picked it for like something Halloween-y, because it sort of leans more into like the God and heaven and spiritual kind of side of Halloween as opposed to like zombies. Like we did Blackest Night before and stuff like that, but I thought this one would be a fun thing to do because we've been so deep in supernatural lately.
Oh, baby. Oh, God. We still haven't even watched the final episodes yet.
It's killing me. I've had multiple things spoiled for me already online.
Really? I've been really good about just basically like not looking while clicking on things.
Okay, well, I mean that's its own whole other thing.
It's almost like we have an entire podcast dedicated to it, but
yeah,
maybe we should do our sort of final reviews.
Yeah, sure. So, final thoughts and cape ranking out of 5 for this Gotham by Midnight volume.
Absolutely. So I think that this book is something special that I've read. It's something that actually is like stuck with me. Like I really, really enjoyed it. I think that it's like from a storytelling standpoint, I don't think it's over the moon. I think that it just is cool. Like the whole time I was like, oh, that's cool. Oh, that's cool. Like, oh yeah. Like the whole time I was just like, this is a fun book. It's cool. It's festive. Reading it right now. I think that it handles everything that it does exactly the way that it should have. There was no major falters in it. It actually addresses like a cool social issue. It brings in this whole question about like what does the police force do with all the crazy shit that happens in Gotham? Like I want more books from this crew now. Like I want to know what do they do when like supernatural-ish stuff happens to Batman? Are they involved with that stuff? Like what happens with Solomon Grundy? Like are they involved with that? Like I want to know all the other things. Could they maybe they can run into like other supernatural characters within DC? Like that's the stuff where I'm like, oh, this has like a ton of legs and is a really good It's almost like you could create a Gotham-based police show that doesn't really have to happen with Batman involving with it, but can also cross over with all of the other DC characters.
Listen, I complained a lot about the turn that Gotham took in introducing all of Batman's villains. But if instead it took the turn to the midnight shift and just went like, listen, before Batman, before Mr. Freeze, there's just a bunch of ghost shit in Gotham. I would have been like, holy shit, yes.
Yeah.
Put like Gordon Bullock, Corrigan, a Sister Justine kind of character, put them on a team together, and then I'd be like, oh, fuck, this show knows what it's doing.
The DC shows so desperately want to make a non-Batman, like, Batman show.
Yeah.
And this has been sitting there the whole time. It's like, we'll make the Batwoman show, which I'm glad it exists, but we'll make a Batwoman show.
Yeah.
But we're not really going to have any of the Batman villains in it. And even when we do, it's going to kind of not be right. Oh, we'll make a Gotham police department show, but we're going to end up just putting in all of the major villains in it. And it's going to kind of just become a Batman show. We're going to make this pre-Alfred thing. You know how much you love all of the stuff from that time period that doesn't have anything to do with Batman. But it's sitting there the whole time. It's the right decision. You get to you can have run-ins, but also the police department can't really handle it. So it's more of just like all that stuff happens, but this is what's happening while that's going on. But you get to have all of the stuff you want. You can have your cake and fucking eat it too, while doing something that's different. It's just god damn it, I want this to be a TV show now.
Totally.
I love the concept. I think all that entire team is so cool, and everybody has like a complete really good purpose, and I want to know all their backstories now, and I want to know more about that. They even teased a bit of it so that you're like, oh, there's a potential for all this other stuff too, and they've all probably got really cool backstories. And what happened to when the first time that girl found out that people die when she screams? There's so much potential with this thing. I mean, it's 5 capes for me.
Yeah, nice. Yes. I like it when I make you read something that you don't immediately hate. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think you touched on most of it. I don't have too much to add to that. Like I said, the art. Oh,
also, they did a social issue thing without being too heavy-handed. Wow.
Listen. I mean, fine. You don't have to throw the other one in the bus.
I can't just let you win. I'm sorry.
Fucking asshole. Yeah, I mean, I don't have too much to add. Like I said, the art really does it for me in this book. Yeah. I love the idea of being terrified of the Spectre. Anyone with any portion of God's power should be terrifying, even if they were possessed of their faculties. But just even the idea, the concept of this story, which is like, these things are causing problems in Gotham in order to attract the attention of the Spectre, because they know once he's out, he will recognize what the bigger problem is. And that idea that, like, this character, you can't, well, at least at this point in the book, you can't direct him. Like, he comes out, he might not do what you want him to do. That is a really terrifying sort of thing. Yeah. And I love, like, the horror of that, and like that thing of Corrigan trying to keep this person basically like an undead person, because Corrigan is dead and the host for the Spectre. So this person who has already died, just a human soul trying to contend with the power of God, is really like, I love that shit. I mean, this one is 100% a 5 caper for me.
Without a doubt. Yeah, it's great. Yeah. Love it.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you've read Gotham by Midnight, let us know what you think of it. Did you like this one? Did you read the next volume? Do you want to read more? I have the whole series. Would you read the rest of it?
Yeah.
Tight. Nice.
I know. I actually want to read a comic book.
You've changed, man.
I know. I mean, I say that. I also have like stacks of comic books, and I just bought a bunch when we were in Ontario. Like,
I know. I'm working my way through a bunch that my wife picked up for me.
Yeah, you got a bunch. Yeah, some really cool shit too.
I got a lot. Yeah,
we'll have to do like a double on them or something of all the stuff.
Oh, totally. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, then why don't we go to where people can find us online?
Sure.
So
that's a very good transition.
Yep, I'm good at this podcasting. 2 weeks. We would love to hear from you, residents. So why don't you reach out to us through our various social media platforms, such as our Facebook,
Dr. DC Podcast,
our Twitter,
at Dr. DC,
Instagram,
Dr. DC Podcast,
email,
drdcpodcast@gmail.com,
Reddit,
r/Dr_DC.
The doc phone is now open.
208-917-3238.
DCEU if you're nasty.
Nasty.
And of course, you can always go to our website,
drdcpodcast.com or .ca.
And we didn't do any today, but we love those reviews, baby. Give them to us. 5 stars, iTunes.
Yeah, we'll take those reviews anywhere you want to give them to us.
Yeah, you can just slip it in when we're not looking.
I mean, no, but...
How else do reviews happen?
Jesus. Good God.
And if you want even more content, I know we're already giving you a special episode and you're already wanting more content, you fucking greedy bitch.
Yeah, you insatiable pigs.
Well, we've got a Patreon.
Patreon.com/DrDC. There's a $5 level, a $7 level. You get a full bonus episode every week. There's all sorts of extra fun stuff up there. Video episodes, episode theme polls, and just launched a new sort of benefit that everyone gets no matter what level you're at. It's a little book club. Once a month, I pick a book. We all read it. We just chat about it. Just there, we can all shoot the shit about cool DC books.
Yeah. Friends with extra benefits.
Yeah. I'm a giving lover.
I mean, I know your wife. That's not true.
Oh. You guys have spent too much time together. That's
Oh,
the problem
100%.
for me.
Yeah. And I know you paying for content, you're getting these special episodes, and you still want more, you slovenly fucks. Well, you've got a whole other podcast.
You absolute content gluttons.
Fill you to the brim with content, you pigs.
Yeah, you're all like the fat person in Seven that like eats themselves to death with content.
Well, that being said, we've got a whole other podcast all about the TV show, how fitting, Supernatural.
Yeah, I mean, if you enjoy this sort of corner of DC, things with the Spectre or involving the Presence or Phantom Stranger or stuff like that, hop on over to Ghostfacers. If you've never watched Supernatural, you might like it. It's very much comic books, essentially. And it's all really, really revolves around those sort of occult and divine kind of aspects. So head on over to Ghostfacers, wherever you get your podcasts. We are rewatching every episode of Supernatural, talking about real-world monster lore, all sorts of fun stuff.
That's right. And that is it for this spooktacular month. Jingle bells, jingle bells.
Good King Wenceslas looked out. Ooh, Stephen.
Jingle hells, jingle hells.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. That's good. Santa Claus is coming to hell.
It's beginning to look a lot like death.
Murder. Oh, sorry.
I'm dreaming of a red Christmas.
Nice. Yeah, I like that one.
That's right. That's it for our very own Doctober.
This is the longest outro we've ever done. It's half the length of the episode.
Ho, ho, ho. Happy Halloween. And then ciao, ciao.
Adios.
They always fight for what is right. Live with danger and adventure. They are men of might.
This was a Brain Freeze podcast.